Hello everybody, welcome. We're waiting on a couple more people, so feel free. Over there we have 1 trillion bags of proper corn, completely sweet salted. Please feel free to help yourselves. Have a delicious, nutritious dinner, and we'll get started in a minute. Hello, I'm enjoying the gamble. Welcome to Hustings for these Lent elections. It's the year 2023, great year. It's going to be fantastic. Basically, we have a whole bunch of races to get through. Some are uncontested, and we'll spend 10 minutes on those. Some are contested, we'll spend 20 on those. There's not much more that I can say. One sec. There we are. I'm sure the candidates know this already, but just for the benefit of everyone in the room, the candidates will make a 1-minute opening speech. We'll then take questions that have been submitted, and then possibly questions from the floor. And after that, they'll make a minute closing speech. Is that right? Yes. Or a final statement, if you will. Obviously, it's in the rules, but everyone, be respectful. Don't shout out other people, etc., etc. And with that, we will begin with the university councillors, or the candidates for the university council. Yeah, take a seat in whichever order you like. I'm going to go in my order on my list, so it doesn't matter where you sit. There is a fourth candidate, just thought I should mention, Varish Pratap. They don't seem to be here at the moment, but hopefully we'll see them in a bit. Yeah, have one. I assume it's drinkable. Okay then, so my order on my list is Sam Carling, who's on my left and your right. Sam Hutton, who's very helpfully put themselves exactly where they need to be, and then Varish, and then Noah Rouse, brilliant. Just what I said. So we'll start with Sam Carling for 1 minute.
Can we have like a time to time ourselves with, or are you just going to like...
Ooh, that's a good point. I think you can have a timer on your phone or something if you want.
I just like to be able to see how long I've got.
When I want to. Right. When you're ready, Sam.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sam. Hello. I'm the current university councillor, and I'm very excited to be standing for re-election. So my four kind of key pledges are more power for JCRs and MCRs. So I want to kind of, although it's very important that the central SU is involved at every stage of university governance, what I'd like to see is a bit more involvement with JCRs and MCRs at the various kind of committee levels and such like. I'm promising to support our staff, as I have been doing already. I was sort of really big on fighting for more progressive pay uplifts during the kind of cost of living crisis. Pay uplifts are being awarded by the university, and I've helped to ensure that those are going to be more progressive going forward. I'm promising more climate action as well. So yeah, essentially what I'd like you to judge us on tonight as candidates is not just on our promises but also on our record. So I'm hoping sort of people have read manifestos, and I'm hoping that kind of the information online about what I've done over the past year is something that perhaps you'll want to ask questions on, but I'm hoping that kind of that will persuade you that I'm the best candidate to keep on doing the job. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Now moving on to the second Sam of the night. Yeah, basically whenever you're ready. Opening statement, 1 minute.
Sure thing. All right, so yeah, thank you. I'm not going to repeat all the things that I've got on my manifesto or on my social media because that's just a waste of your time. But instead, I'm sort of going to highlight the reason that I am here and why I'm running. So I've been campaigning with Cambridge Climate Justice for the better part of the last 2 years, and we've been working very hard with campaigns like the Fossil Free Research and Fossil Free Careers campaign, which involve cutting funding ties and cutting the advertising of careers between the university and the fossil fuel industry. And we've faced a lot of pushback, and a lot of that pushback has not been from students, as you might first expect. They seem generally very amicable, but instead from the university governance and the university council. And I think one of the key problems that we have with the University Council is that academics want these changes. Very recently, last year, the grace that I'll call the Fossil Free Research Grace, where essentially they were trying to cut funding relationships with fossil fuel companies, got recommended to the Council, and the Council voted to delay it and publish a report in the meantime. But that delay was meant to be to early Lent 2023. We still haven't had word on that. So yeah, I'm here trying to fix those delays and make students more aware of what that is.
Thank you, Sam. As I said, I don't believe Varish is here yet. So Noah, feel free to make your opening statement when you're ready.
Hello, I'm Noah. I'm also running for University Council, as you hadn't gathered. I'm running sort of on 3 main principles, and I feel like the first principle is overarching. I want to make sure that the University Council really represents the student voice and sort of breaks out of the student politics bubble that I feel that student politics has been in recent years. And I think by doing this, it's really important that communication is key and transparency of the council. So I think what I really want to do is make it really clear what the council is and what it does, and just be a friendly face and regularly meet with student groups and represent student interests like those of climate justice, which I think are really important. But I also think that only by really increasing accountability and transparency, and also advertising the role of the student council, of the university council, and what the student representative can do, that's how we can actually make better change.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We had a form for questions online so that people can submit, and I've got one here. So we'll go in, I think, reverse order from how we started, just, I don't know, fun. And the question is, how will you ensure that students are kept informed and engaged about the decisions of the University Council?
Well, big question. So I think the most important thing is, like I said, advertising what the Student Council really does. I think it's very well to like set up Facebook groups and do all of that, but that's actually not engaging. So I think what really should happen is there should be not only be a forum where the university, whoever is elected to the University Council, is available at quite regular times to talk to students, whether individuals or groups, and their interests, but also that the University Councillor should regularly meet, I'd say at least once a term, regularly meet with like student groups which represent student interests, and I think that involves activist groups, but that also involves like source groups, and like it's about, I think this role is about representing true student interests, and that's about all students rather than certain bubbles, and I think it's about popping bubbles and sort of like reaching across and like catching them all together.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I forgot to mention earlier, we'll also be keeping the 1 minute time for answers to questions, but you were 54 seconds, so you're pretty fast. Right, Sam, the question was, how will you ensure the students are kept informed and engaged about the decisions of the University Council? I should say that's Sam Hutton.
So I think that's sort of one of my key promises is to regularly publicise and report on decisions of the council, because at the moment most of the way that you can interact with the council is reading the reporter, which is written in quite academic and quite obtuse language a lot of the time. And those of us involved in Cambridge climate justice, as well as those involved in other activist groups, have seen that kind of shift from basically not being able to understand it to going through old archives of the reporter and working out which race corresponds to which motion. I would regularly publicise, regularly report on those sorts of things, both on social media and through SU channels, if possible. And the other thing that I would quite like to do is to meet regularly, as Noah said, with student groups. I've already pledged to meet with climate campaign groups, but I think it's an important role to kind of take votes and to take the voice of students on board. One of the other manifesto policies that I put forward was to more regularly take votes from student groups, whether that is referendum style and also from activist groups on specific topics. So yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And finally, Sam 5, how will you ensure that students are kept informed and engaged about the decisions of the University Council?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. And I think the first kind of caveat or not is that a lot of the work in the University Council is arguably not particularly interesting to a lot of students. So, for example, the last meeting we spent several hours talking about HR policy changes, which is not going to be necessarily the most interesting topic. So a lot of it's about focusing on the topics that actually are going to be of interest to students. Of course, as we said, climate is a big one there. And what I've done throughout my tenure so far is I've been in regular contact with JSCRs and other kind of leaders of student societies. I've made it very clear that I'm always open to have discussions when something major has happened, not just kind of within the University Council itself, but in kind of other facets of the role. I've spoken to student press about things and, had articles published and discussions had about that. I've always been more than willing to comment on things for student press outlets. And a lot of it's about that and just about making sure that the person who is sitting on the University Council is approachable and any student feels as though they can approach them. I think it's a lot less about publishing big updates, although, as I've said, where something big happens, I do and I have made an effort to kind of do that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I don't believe we've had any more questions come through, so I'm very happy to open to the floor. If anyone has questions burning them about being the University Councillor, anything you want to know from any of the members. I will say that questions should be non-targeted as possible. Don't just shout at one person. Shout at all of them. Oh, there's one over there. Adam, go for it.
So,
and I'll repeat it. Sorry, just to say, I'll repeat it for the cameras.
In light of clear rollbacks on green transition policies by fossil fuel companies in recent weeks, including those which actually still work with the university, namely BP, which you have in the studio. Do you think that the university's policy for engagement with research from these companies is now a credible path to a just transition? And if you don't think it's a credible path, would you support motions to cut ties with those companies?
Okay, just to repeat, in light of rollbacks on green transition policies by fossil fuel companies, including those working with the uni, such as BP, is the university policy a credible part of their sort of idea of a just transition being green, or are we being used effectively? And let's go back in reverse. So Sam and Carly, if you're okay to go first, 1 minute, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing to say is it's an incredibly complicated issue because as you kind of touched on there is that extent of greenwashing and that problem of kind of, are we being used, is our reputation almost being hijacked to greenwash these companies? And actually in many cases I think that it is. But at the same time, a lot of the research that is funded by companies, not necessarily fossil fuel companies themselves, but in the recent press, those that are kind of implicated as being linked, actually is pretty important in the green transition. And so that's why I have supported the report being put forward, rather than kind of voting on that grace immediately, because I think it's a really nuanced issue, and there are aspects of the research that I would like to see us remove, us cut that funding away, but I think it's completely unethical. But there are more nuanced ones that I think actually it's better for us to keep that to a partnership going in some cases. And I'll very briefly say, I think you said earlier, Sam, that we haven't heard anything back about that report. We have. It's currently ongoing. We're due to get results back from that pretty much in April, I think. Mm-hmm. So I'd never argue that it's a delay. I don't think it was a delay. I think it's important that we, there's no kind of hostility and pushback here, right? Everybody is on the same side. It's just about how we actually have the biggest impact that we can.
Thank you, Sam. And now to Sam Hutton.
Yeah, so thanks. I think it's pretty clear from most of the things that I've said that I think that the fossil fuel companies are using us very much as a tactic to get social license, but also to direct the direct climate research. So that includes researching things like carbon capture and storage, which often has direct implications for enhanced oil recovery. And it includes sort of broadly agreeing with that philosophy of we can keep emitting as long as we capture and we put things back in the ground as long as we're trying. But really we need to not look at the messaging of these companies, we need to look at their capital expenditure. And companies like BP, things like it's only about 5% in the last 5 years of their expenditure was spent on anything not related to oil, gas and coal extraction and burning. And I think broadly across the world, it's about 98% of the fossil fuel companies spending goes directly into that. So I think really we need to focus on the fact that these companies are very much not involved in the green transition. They would like to be, and the University of Cambridge should not be complicit in that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And finally, Noah, do you have a question?
Yeah, let's give it a go. Yeah, I completely agree with just what Sam just said, and he's spot on. There's no need to repeat that. I think just going back to what you mentioned there about how stuff is in the works, I think if stuff is in the works, surely the utmost importance should be to reflect that, tell the student body that, tell that as that sort of is the role. So I feel like, yes, I personally feel like we should cut ties because we're a prestigious institution that. Okay, it's easy for us to be greenwashed, but it's actually easy for us to push back a bit. We've got the clout to say, okay, we are going to cut ties, and I think that's much more innovative than sort of playing hokey pokey with the fossil fuel companies and seeing where they'll end up and whether they'll be coloured green. Yeah, and I think the role of the university councillor is to make it really known what is going on, and even if that is boring, I don't think that's an excuse. I'm not saying you're excusing, but I think even if it is boring, I think that even the boring things apply to everyone, and everyone should know about them. So I think that especially with the fossil fuel stuff, that climate organisations like the ones Sam's involved in, surely they should be on the front lines of knowing what's actually going on from the university council.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'll have to go for one more question, very brief. I need you all kind of 30 seconds just so we can to this one. Go for it.
This is a question on behalf of Zainab, who's our current undergraduate president. The University Council is a trustee board, and so by sitting on it, you become a trustee of the university. A lot of you have mentioned wanting to empower students and inform them about what's being discussed. But when there are issues of confidentiality, how do you plan to balance your responsibility as a trustee with your commitment to transparency with students? I appreciate that that's not really a 30-second answer.
Yes, I'll just repeat that very quickly. This is on behalf of Zainab, President. The University Council is a trustee board, so you become a legal trustee of the university. If you become a university councillor, you'll want to empower and inform students, I'm sure, but how do you balance that with the need for confidentiality and certain matters? Going back the other way, that's right.
In a really short answer, just common sense and not engaging in student politics. I think the primary goal should always be what is best for the university community and the students in that. So obviously if something should be confidential, it should be confidential, but I don't think it's about banding it around. And just, I think it's about sort of abiding by the letter of the law, and even when you do have to be even when you do have to be silent about something, confidential about something, I think it's about just listening to people. Like ultimately, I think we, whoever is elected, should be a mouthpiece. I think we are a glorified middleman or middle person, and therefore it's about just common sense and not being overly politicking.
Brilliant, thank you. Sam.
Yeah, so I think it's a very difficult issue, obviously, to be confidential at the same time, wanting to be a voice for students. But I think the main part of that is that a lot of these things that students care about are not going to be these confidential issues. They're going to be the issues that are proposed on things like climate. There are issues proposed on things like fair pay, which, while there are some confidential details of, the broad strokes are going to be generally acceptable. And I think the other thing is that as a trustee, while you are responsible for the university, you are a student representative, and the University Council is the only student representative that's not an SC position, so we are representing sort of the real current students, and that's the way I would like to approach the position.
Brilliant, thank you, and finally, Sam Farley.
Sure, so I think as has been touched on, these kind of areas of confidentiality are quite rare to come up, and when they do, it's usually in sort of the details of an item and kind of the broad touches of it are generally okay. The exceptions to that are when, for example, the e-bus result was known, because that's commercially sensitive. I knew that about a week before I could publicly say anything. But usually when there's something major, it comes to University Council pretty shortly before it's going to be announced anywhere, so it's a bit of a non-issue in that respect. In relation to the actual details of perhaps items that are more interesting to sort of...
I feel we just finished the sentence. Okay, brilliant. In that case, I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on to just closing speeches. So again, that's a minute each, or less. If you'd like to say anything in conclusion, I think we're back the way. Get this moving on. Yeah, go.
Okay, sure, yeah, so I mean, as I said, I'd really like you to judge candidates on our record and who you believe is going to be the person that's best suited to the role, right? Because I think involvement in activism is incredibly important, and I incredibly respect people who are involved in activism, as I have been in other areas. But it's about how do you then translate that skill set into being an effective decision maker and being an effective influencer in a body in which you are not going to be the majority, right? I mean, there's 3 students on a body of 25 people here. It requires a lot of tactic, it requires a lot of kind of careful approach to bring people on side and kind of not quite picking your battles, but being reasonably judicious in the arguments that you use. And I'd like people to look back at my record so far. As I said, I've made some material kind of achievements in relation to staff pay and other issues. I've been fighting to improve street lighting for students. We've got decisions on that going to be made very soon by the County Council. And I hope that kind of that record is enough to convince students I'm the best person to do this job. Thank you very much.
Bang on 1 minute. Thank you very much, Sam. Next, Sam Hutton, a minute to sort of finalise.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think what we need to recognise as a student body is that, for me and for many, climate is the most important issue. But there are several other issues that go hand in hand in a sort of just transition, as well as obviously the day-to-day runnings of the University Council. My position is very much one coming from the activist background, as Sam definitely touched on. But I think that also has a certain, there is also a certain point where the political background, and coming from a place of council politics and coming from a place of student politics, also has a negative interaction on the ability to actually get things done that are really wanted by student campaigning groups and are really wanted by the student body as a whole, rather than just sort of the small little political groups. I think as University Councillor, I would fight hard to make sure that more students are represented, more students know what's going on in Council, and that the students who have issues that are very important to them get those issues heard and get those issues pushed through whenever possible. So yeah, thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. And finally, Noah, finish for us.
Fantastic. I just say, like, I think honesty is endearing. That I'm running on a clean slate, and that's got positives and that's got negative connotations. But I really hope that I've come across clear that what I'm running on is hearing our voice. And I do think that pushing for climate justice advocacy is really central to that. But I also think it's about widening, like we've been talking about, widening the bubble and being a friendly face and not being caught up in certain movement. I'm not saying caught up, but not being overly attached to certain movements which don't seem to represent the entire student view, which I think the climate justice does definitely represent the entire student view. And sort of just being approachable, being friendly, and saying, look, let's work together to do what we can do to help you. And I hope whoever is elected really takes that to heart and it's all about listening to people and putting your ego to the side and putting other people first.
Thank you very much. So that's it for the University of Feel free to go basically. We will all stay and question arguing you might work with. Just a reminder that there is a full candidate for each they will not turn up. Right, I think we will move on to move on to the mature students or the portfolio officer, which is Keen Claire Agden. Hello, it's just myself. Just before I'm going to move on to this, so I can be quite happy. This is our biggest group of people yet. So yeah, pick any chair. Anywhere you like, basically. Actually, just to the previous people, Sam and Noah, did you guys use your water glasses? You did. You did. In that case, we'll this one, that one. I don't know. Fine. I guess we'll leave them there. I'm very happy to. Right. In that case, is it Eki? Ekina. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Right, Ekina. In that case, if you're ready to start, there's a minute of introduction for yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Ekina Agden. Everyone calls me Aggie, so please do the same. I recognise some faces here. Thanks all for coming. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, quite a few. And the course I'm doing is a Master of Studies in Healthcare Data. I'm running for the Mature Student Rep for quite a few reasons, really. I think it's important to create regular spaces for the mature students by mature students. I also think that mature students have quite a unique proposition in that they have life experiences. A lot of them are already in careers, such as the mature part-time students, and that can actually help undergrads who are hoping to break into those same industries. So one of my hopes is to create a buddying scheme between mature students and their mature postgraduate students and mature undergraduate students to really help penetrate some of the fields of engagement, and also in that way making, does that mean wrap up? Oh, jeez.
Apologies.
Very, very quickly, what qualifies me, I put on an Afro-Caribbean Society Mental Health Conference in 2021. That joined all the ACS societies in England. It was brilliant. Lots of engagement there. So if I'm hoping to sort of create this sort of buddying scheme for all mature students, that helps. I was part-time rep, so I know that some of last year, so I know some of the issues that part-time students have, and I'm currently in the mature rep space. And so I think you just need somebody who knows what it's like to be a part-time student. I've been an undergrad before doing my first degree, and I'm now also a postgrad. So that's why I'm putting myself forward again.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I won't be too strict on the time, seeing as you're not competing against anyone else. So, let me have a look. Did we get any questions through? We haven't on the online form, so I'm very happy to go straight to questions from the audience. If there's anybody who wants a question there, mature students representative.
Don't show. A lot of people don't even really know what the position is about, so yeah.
Well, Ashley's question there, so go for it.
I was an undergrad, I was an undergrad, and I have a PhD, and I can't as a mature PhD student. I guess my question is like, there's no mature students here, right? There's a real lack of engagement in general, and there's politics that take from our mature students. Do you have a plan to engage people and let them know what's
Completely, yeah. So the last couple of months, I've basically been asking that exact question. I've been going on WhatsApp groups, going to colleges, like both postgraduate and mixed colleges, but really just engaging primarily with the mature students, the mature student populations there, and saying, how can we get, what would you like to see more of that would excite you? And basically, the results of all that work just came in very recently, and so they want, the mature student population of this cohort anyway, want to drop-in sessions, so a regular drop-in sessions virtually, and that would help, because we've got mature students who are doing part-time courses, they're only here once a week, like a week for one term, and they also want to engage. And so in time for next term, my hope is to basically put up the first virtual mature student sort of forum, drop-in, and essentially do it every other week. I've also been speaking with Hannah Pinson, who is incredible. She's over there, pretending she can't hear me. And basically about how to let people even know more about the position, because part of the problem with the fact that there isn't very much engagement is people don't even really know that there is a mature student rep. They don't really know what that means. And so on the Student Union website, I'm hoping to do a video just talking a bit more about the position and just basically, just doing a bit more promotion. So it's the drop-in virtuals to start off with, a lot more sort of stuff going onto the Student Union website, and then hopefully just leaving some sort of legacy so that next time there's not just one person up here and there are 3 people vying for this position.
Thanks very much. What's the time? I think we can go for one short question if there's anyone else. And in that case, we'll go for just any closing remarks you'd like to make. I'd say it in a minute, but feel free to go slightly over.
I think just sort of the main thing is just what my peer sort of said. It's all about engagement. There are, we do have a sizable mature student population at the university. Why aren't we as engaged? When I've been meeting people, both in lectures and on other courses and in forums and social spaces, people really, really, really want to get engaged, but they're very rarely represented on the ground. So my hope in the closing statement is just to create more engagement, more awareness about this position, and definitely the drop-in sessions are going on. Me and Hannah are going to put up some funky videos, so the mature student rep position is elevated. I'm just really, really hoping that you'll vote for me, just so that I can give mature students that voice. And also, just very, very finally, just appreciating the fact that mature students offer a really, really incredible proposition to the rest of the student body, in that, when I'm not studying, I'm a doctor in London. I have colleagues who work in politics and civil servants, and they're all doing part-time courses here in Cambridge. And so if we could create some sort of buddying scheme whereby students within Cambridge were sort of linking up with undergraduates who wanted to penetrate the same sort of areas, I think, you know, we do very, very well for all students at the university. So when we have good mature student representation, I believe all the student body benefits.
Right, well, thank you very much, Aggie. Round of applause. We're going to move on to a 10-minute access break. So that'll bring us back at just before 10 to 7. Feel free to do whatever you like within the legal limits. Thank you very much.
Have some more popcorn. We have too much popcorn.
Yes, have popcorn.
Here, actually, you have to. Oh, here we are.
We're 5 minutes over, so Oh, no, no, no. There's one the class.
They should be.
These are all theoretically dirty.
Yeah, that one's been used,
That's amazing.
and that one has been but technically dirty. Technically
It's just one next. It's just kind of
perfect, lovely.
Sorry, yeah. No, thank you.
Oh, yes.
Archie, you have access to that on your computer.
Yeah, but I don't want to bring it on the phone.
Part-time is like when you come in a week, term, because you work. Full-time is yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I've done nothing.
We need more. That's it.
Yes. That's the announcement. So we're just going to put this here and take them. Yeah, West Ham is right. Yeah, take them.
All right, everybody. get ourselves ready for another 3 roles. What we're going to have is the AEP, that's the Access, Education and Participation Officer. We're going to have the undergrad version of that. Then we're going to have the Disabled Students Officer, and then we're going to have the postgrad AEP. I also realised I didn't introduce myself. I'm Archie. Hello, the reason I'm here is because I'm an elected member of the Democracy Committee, which is great fun. So, we're going to start off with the undergrad AEP. His name is Frederick, and you have a minute ready to start your speech.
Okay, excellent. So hi, so I'm here today because the cost of living crisis is the biggest threat to Cambridge accessibility since the introduction of tuition fees. Universities across the country pledged additional one-off payments, but Cambridge, one of the richest, hasn't changed its bursary since its inception in 2015. Financial security is vital for student accessibility, and it's vital that this is provided for students. Equally, the accessibility of education at the university is falling behind. Universal lecture recording is being rolled back, and the university continues to push back on the reading proposal, such as clear benefits to students. It's vital that for us as students to push for this accessibility, and as AEP I pledge to do this. Equally, SU access provision is falling behind. The SU is in a unique position to provide a complete picture of the university, unbiased by the university's policies, but widening participation is increasingly being university dictated and is only sanitising the university's image. Student-led access is desperately needed to widen participation and hold the university to account. Finally, our education continues to be corrupted by fossil fuel companies, even if in small folds. Allowing this to continue biases student opinion in their favour and needs to be removed. I hope you will support my causes and vote for me for your next AEP. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I think, just I forgot to mention earlier, there had been 2 candidates for AEP, but one of them pulled out, so just for now. Actually, no, not just for now. For this election.
This one?
Nominations. There's also return on nomination if you so wish. So we have 3 questions come through. Because there's quite a few, I'm going to give you 40 seconds to answer them. I'm just taking something to start with. So the first question is, what has your involvement been with the shadowing scheme in the past, and what is your vision for it going forwards?
So, I have unfortunately only ever participated in the shadowing scheme during the 2 years during lockdown, so I haven't had direct experience with it in its normal form. But ultimately, I think the shadowing scheme is really positive, and it really does show what university life is like at Cambridge. And I want to make sure that we show this in the most unbiased form, and so that is what I prioritise with the shadowing scheme going forward.
Thank you very much. And now, the second question that we got through was, as the undergrad AEP, you are in charge of the SU's NSS boycott, National Student Survey boycott. How would you approach this boycott?
So, I think that this policy actually is up for review this year, but my priorities with it is we need to sort of use it as a bargaining chip. We can get so much. The university is incredibly frustrated that we continue to not fill out the NSS because it makes them look bad. But there is so much we can do with this leverage, and I think we should be using that to our advantage. How that will carry out, I think, would have to be done with consultation with students, and obviously the roots of the boycott in resisting marketisation of education is important. So I would like to continue with that in some way.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And finally, and then we'll open up the floor very quickly. On your manifesto, you discuss a, quote, student-led access campaign. What exactly would this look like?
So my priority I would create a similar thing to, say, the existing campaigns within the SUs, like VME campaign or ethical affairs. It would be a way for students to work with the SU to create new access campaigns or access projects, and so the idea would be allow people to volunteer and work with me and the postgraduate AEP to come up with ideas, and hopefully, so the details I haven't quite planned out yet, and I'd like to sort of spend the time as an AP working towards design that. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. So it's a campaign with capital C.
Campaign with capital C, yes.
Right, yeah. Okay, now opening the floor to questions. Does anyone have a question for their potentially next undergrad Access Education and Participation Officer. It's alright, if you don't, you can spam on email later, I'm sure. I'm going to take that as a no, so in that case, go for your 1 minute for the closing. Or, Wednesday.
Just to review, accessibility to university is falling behind. We need to fight for student financial security and to ensure that education in university is accessible to all. I hope you will vote for me and I can ensure that no student is left behind. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And next up on our lineup we have the Disabled Student Officer, so that's Elle Gardner-Thomas. There. Okay, so Elle, you have a minute when you're ready for your any opening remarks you'd like to make.
So hi, I'm Elle. I'm running for Disabled Students Officer. Whilst my time at Cambridge has been great, it has been incredibly impacted by the university's inaccessible structures, and I'm sure a lot of my fellow disabled friends have felt the same way. As much as Ellie has done fantastic jobs making leaps and bounds in terms of supporting students undergoing intermission, students struggling with not being able to access lecture recordings and so on, there is still so much more to be done within this university across both the colleges and the central university system themselves to ensure that disabled students feel included, supported and respected within this university. Whilst I have a lot of thoughts and things I would like to do, broadly it can be put into 3 categories. Community building, so building communities for disabled students within the university, building those networks of support, which I feel like the collegiate system completely decimates basically, and increasing that sort of sense of community as one sort of thing, and then collegiate cohesion, making sure that the policies across colleges are the same. There is more pressure on the colleges as part of the university to ensure that they respect and uphold the rights of disabled students. And then lastly, just continuing to lobby for DRC reform because it's underfunded, overstretched, and is letting its disabled students down.
Brilliant, thank you, Al. So we've had, again, 3 questions come through on the magical online form. Number 1 of those, I'm going to say again, kind of 40 seconds, if that's okay, to answer those. Being president of the Disabled Students Campaign will be a key part of your role. How would you support your committee to engage in campaigning?
So one of my big points is that I think that the unpaid members of JCRs, of the DSC, who do a lot of the legwork on the ground of supporting the rights of disabled students in this university, they are untrained. They have limited training, but to increase the amount of training that they have and the support they have through that, and I know there's lots of group chats and different campaign pages and things, but making sure they are centrally organised and that the training is increased for these people who are doing fantastic things, but with little support, and also increasing the collegiate support for those students who are doing that work.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And question number 2. There is much less disabled student representation for postgraduates. How would you ensure that they can be represented adequately as well?
So I feel like a lot of the MCRs don't really have disabled students officers. Like most JCRs have a disabled student officer, but most MCRs don't. And that would be a big thing I'd like to push on, working with the mature students officer when they're elected to try and increase the representation at collegiate level, and hear back from mature post-grad disabled students about what support they need specifically and how that might differ from that of an undergrad.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And final submitted question. Fitness to study is one of the many issues that disproportionately affects disabled students. Do you see yourself working on this? How would you approach a new issue arising that significantly affects disabled students but isn't one of your manifesto points?
So I kind of feel like that's 2 questions in one there. I'll approach the first bit about fitness to study, I think. Okay, good, thank you. Once again, Ellie has done wonderful things, making big steps on the fitness to study, and I want to continue what they have been doing. They have made big steps, but there is obviously always more to be done. Things change, things evolve. So really just looking at where Ellie has left off and gaining feedback from disabled students about what they feel, and looking at the steps that have been made and how they can be continued to be made. So it's not something to be completely dropped. I feel like a big thing in this role is that continuation, because people don't like suddenly cease to be disabled just because someone else has taken over, like the same issues persist. So just continuing the work Elliot has done, I think, is a big part of this. But as the question suggests, there are always new issues. Things change, new things pop up, like, I don't know, coronavirus, that obviously threw a massive, spanner in the works, so to speak, for a lot of disabled students. So I think it is broadly focusing on both the big, long-standing issues that students have faced in this university structurally, that have kept them out, that have made this university inaccessible. But I think it's just really all about listening to disabled students and what they want, which is why one of my manifesto points was to host regular office hours, because I feel like a lot of disabled students don't actually get to meet their DRC advisor, because the service is overstretched and underfunded. So having that opportunity to speak to disabled students and hearing what matters and listening to what matters, I think, is what's going to make the biggest difference. So obviously if things come up that aren't manifesto points, they will be focused on, but it's all about balance.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And as always, we'll open up the floor if anyone has any particularly burning questions for their potentially next Civic Students Officer. Oh, there's one over there. Go for it.
Hey, what would you do about Cambridge student suicide problem?
Sorry, just to repeat for the camera. What would you do about Cambridge's student suicide problem?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. There's a lot to unpack there. Because as much as this position is disabled students officer, I think mental health obviously is recognised as a disability under the sort of DRC's framework. And I think a big issue of why we have such, unfortunately, high suicide rates is that there isn't the support there. Like, even just down to the fact that the Disabled Resource Centre, Disability Resource Centre, ADRC, covers both mental health and disabilities under one umbrella. There needs to be more specific support for mental health problems. This is a very intense place. The suicide problem is horrific, but the structural underpinnings of this university, I'm not explain that because it's just so unjustifiable and obviously so tragic. But I think both addressing the structural underpinnings of the university that leads to that problem and increasing the support at the level of the ADRC, of colleges, and things like that, more targeted, lobbying the university to increase the amount of support they offer as well, in more targeted ways, would be a way in for a very complex problem.
Thank you very much. And I probably should have mentioned earlier, no one has any compulsion to stay in this room if there's anything that comes up that you'd rather not listen to. So any more questions from the floor before we wrap up with the Disabled Students Officer? One over there.
This is a really kind of question. How do I find your manifesto? It's on the issue.
Yes, so this is actually quite an ironic story. My manifesto is not on the website because my laptop broke. And I needed a replacement one from the college. They gave it to me, but it could not, it was not adaptable with my text-to-speech software, so I just couldn't use the thing. Which is, just point in case of how this university is. Obviously, like, the college is, was very good to provide a laptop, but, it's, yeah. The manifesto, I'm going to get it sent and sorted, but there was technological issues and accessibility issues, so my manifesto was not uploaded.
So, will it be on the website?
It will be on the website, like, ASAP. My laptop is now fixed, and I am back, yeah.
You'll see it surely. As always, spam refresh the SU website for all of your latest knowledge needs. And I think then we'll wrap up with the citizens. So if you have any closing remarks you'd like to make, anything particular else?
No, I just think that like disabled students have had such a hard time at this university, feeling alienated, excluded, underrepresented, and just frankly not welcome in this university due to its structure and lack of support. And I really think, as much as the previous disabilities officer have done, all of them have done wonderful things, the problem still persists. And I think we now have an opportunity to really push for change, to ensure that disabled students feel all of those things, feel welcome, supported, included, etc. And I'd really like to be the driving force behind that. So yeah, if you're eligible, vote for me, please.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And finally, before the next access break, which will be at 7:15 or so, we have the postgraduate Access, Education and Participation Officer. So we have one candidate for that, and that's Anastasia Parasinakis. Take it all the way around.
Just got my name right, so it's good
Oh,
stuff.
that's good. I spent 2 hours practicing.
Oh.
Right, so as always, you have a minute to make any sort of opening statements you'd like to, and then we'll move on to questions.
So I'm Annie. If you don't mind, I've got notes with me because ADHD and I forget things. I'm running for Access Officer Postgraduates because my path to and through further education has been full of barriers related to all things access. And along that path, I've been met with so many representations of what can go wrong and what can go very, very well when access is provided, facilitated, but also revoked. And to that end, I'm running on 3 main platforms related to finance, education, and welfare access. So in terms of finance, I just want to make sure that postgraduate students have access to loans, 0% interest, loans to cover any distributed funds that don't come from on time due to bureaucratic issues. But most importantly, deferred entry for any master students who have received their places and dropped. Those places have been dropped due to not being able to secure funding. Funding is much less accessible for master students than it is for PhD students, and I don't think a lot of people realise that when they go after that. In terms of education, I want to continue previous... Oh, yeah,
Sorry,
that's
okay, brilliant.
We'll talk about it as we go along.
Yeah, exactly. So I have one submitted question, I think so far, is that what we've got? And that is, how do you plan to increase postgrad engagement and participation within the SU?
I think one of the biggest things when I was talking to people when I was running for this was people don't actually even know on a basic level what the difference between the Students' Union is and the Cambridge Debating Union. So I think fixing that would be a great start. I think engaging MCRs is the first step towards that, because I think there are a lot of times where fellow MCR students have come up to me and said, hang on a minute, I've just seen that the SU has passed this and I've seen it on Varsity, but I never knew that that was even a thing. I was never consulted. And the consultation did go out, the MCRs were contacted, but because there is completely unequal sort of oversight and accountability within MCRs in terms of like college disparity, I think sometimes that message doesn't get through to the student body. And so starting there would be a good place.
Right, yeah. And just in case anyone's in doubt, the SU is much more fun than the Cambridge Union. We don't have any more submitted questions, so I'm going to have to take some from the floor. Is there anyone who wants a question there, potentially next? AEPPG, which is a nice fun initialism of the name. I don't see any.
Yeah, I know this role sort of overlaps with a lot of the other officers, so we're looking forward to like working in conjunction with those.
Right, in that case, any closing statements you'd like to make?
Well, actually, I think that in terms of access and participation, Cambridge in general does a very, very good job, but also I think what it fails to do is to look critically at where it can improve. We tend to pat ourselves on the back for the things that we have achieved, and so it's about identifying those gaps, and that's what I hope to do.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Annie. We will again take an access break until, I think it will make it 17 past 7, so feel free to do whatever you like, again, if you want to, within legal limits.
Backstage.
We went all black. I was like,
Size bags. We have 1,000. We actually have 1,000. I think so we have 1,000. No, I think we said, hey, you can have it. No, we should. Like,
No, I think now that the we won't need to
Congratulations.
Hello, you Katie. Sorry, just say I'm not reading.
Sorry. If I am speaking and I wanted to reference something that you said earlier, so if I can't say that it's going to be university would that be a problem in terms of slating?
Is it on the other side? That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, of course. I saw that. I was like, it's the blue
I'm not going to oppose this. I'm
Hello, everybody. Feel free to grab some popcorn for this next part. This will be fun. Is it? I think this is our last. Yes, this is our last set of elections before we finish. So yeah. So next up we have Welfare and Communities Officer. So could Katie Lane and Bobby Brown please come up? I'm just getting a new document through with some questions on it, so lucky you guys up to date. Sorry about this. Right, so as always, you have 1 minute to stop. If I put my thing there, can you both roughly see that? Yes. Brilliant. In that case, we'll start with who's at the top? Katie, if that's all right. So 1 minute to say what you like.
Amazing. Hi guys, I'm Katie. I'm currently in my third year. I'm doing sociology and social anthropology. So I've been one of Girton's welfare officers for the past year, and I have loved every minute of it. It's been the best experience, just getting to work with the students in my college to promote positive wellbeing and to tackle issues around negative wellbeing. Part of my role has meant that I've been working really closely with Daisy, the current welfare and community officer, looking at the policies and projects that have already been being worked on by the SU, like the Intermissing Students Report and the Strategic Review of Mental Health. And it's been really uplifting and inspiring to see all the things that the SU can do, but it's also shown me what potential we have to make real change at the university. I have been listening to the stories of the people at my college for a year now, and it can be heartbreaking sometimes sitting in a room with people listening to the things that they've been going through, and I just really want to take this chance to make real change and to try and improve the university experience for them.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Harvey, the same thing for you, 1 minute to make any opening remarks you'd like to.
Thank you. I'm Harvey, I'm in my third year doing English, I guess I just want to outline more methodology than my policy, but the university is structured against welfare and community. We don't have time for rest, often we don't have time for each other. My work in the last 3 years has focused on holding the institution to account, advocating for the welfare of people and planet. But what I've learned is that welfare isn't something that you fight for the university to give to you. It's something that we make ourselves by fighting for these things. We're never going to be able to build a fairer, greener university just by talking to the institution. We do that by talking to our neighbours and our friends, and that's what the student union is here to facilitate. So I will speak up for you on university committees, but principally I'm here to talk to you and to listen to you. To me, welfare is community and vice versa. I will, as I always have done, fight the institution all the way on climate, cost of living, access. I'm going to prioritise working with you to share knowledge from community groups, signpost resources gatekept by the university, and fight for welfare spaces, places which are safe and which are shared, and which we all have time to enjoy. Sorry, I won't have time.
Thank you very much. So we've had one question come through on the form, so we'll go sort of reverse order if that's all right, just to keep it sort of balanced. The question is, how will you balance the welfare and communities side of your role? So they're in quotes. So how will you balance the welfare and the communities sides of your role? Harvey, put my phone back here. Go for a minute, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's cool. As I said in my opening statement, I don't think it's right to separate those things necessarily. I think in an ideal role this would be two separately fully funded jobs. But I also think that by adopting a community approach to welfare and making sure that different communities of students are not only consulted on but involved in negotiations with the university, and that we host kind of regular forums for students to be involved in, but actually reach out to different groups and share resources among groups and kind of be like a welfare resource in ourselves, not trying to take on advocating for specific groups, but work with them and be a kind of hub for that work.
And Katie, again, how will you balance the welfare and communities sides of your role?
Yeah, so to me something that's really important in welfare policy is intersectionality. So I think it's essential that when we're building our policies, we are considering the ways in which they impact different communities, which is where this interaction between welfare and community comes in for me. So any policies that I'm trying to make and I'm trying to put through, I think it's essential that I'm considering the ways that these impact different communities in Cambridge, both student populations, intermittent students and non-student populations. And I think that's kind of what it boils down to with my policies, is just ensuring that when we are thinking of ways to improve the lives of some students, we're also recognising that these issues are often very nuanced, and we need to make sure that in improving the lives of some students, we're not negatively impacting the lives of other students, and we're trying to create a balanced approach that will benefit the whole Cambridge community, not just specific groups that perhaps have the loudest voices or perhaps have the most activist power.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We've actually somehow, we're ahead of time, we're doing very well. So I'm going to basically get rid of most time limits, so just speak until I say please stop speaking. I'm going to say like a minute and a half, 2 minutes is good. So we're going to open up to questions from the floor. If anybody has any for the potential next welfare and communities officer, we're going to take one there, that's all right.
I just wanted to say that the welfare part of this role means that you have to deal with some really difficult emotional topics, both talking to students and in committee rooms. So in what ways are you prepared to deal with that aspect of the role?
Well, I'll just repeat that if the mic didn't hear. So the welfare part of the role can deal with some heavy topics. How would you deal with that? And going back the other way, so Katie first. If that's okay?
Yeah, amazing. So as someone who's been a welfare officer for the past year, that has very much been part of my role, is dealing with difficult and heavy topics. And it can be a really challenging process because part of dealing with these topics is often adhering to confidentiality, and that can take quite a toll on a person. But I think my main way of dealing with this is understanding that these conversations that you're having, the reason we're having these conversations is in order to uplift and empower students and non-student populations. And so these difficult conversations, they do come with the territory, and we receive training on these. I've already had training on supporting students who are suicidal, supporting students with mental health issues, essential skills for listening to and supporting students. And so I feel like I'm in a really good place to be going into this. But yeah, I think it's impossible to say that when you do this role that you can detach yourself from the stories you hear and from the emotions that come with it, and that is by no means what I'm trying to do when I go for this role. I want to feel the emotions of the people that I'm speaking to, and I want to connect with them, because the only way that I'm going to be able to understand them is by connecting with them on an emotional level, and that will be hard, but that's something I'm prepared to do. So.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Harvey, just so you know, the question was, the welfare part of the role can involve affecting some heavy topics. How would you deal with that? Start when you're ready.
Yeah, I guess I just echo everything he said about respecting people's confidentiality, treating all people with dignity, and everything that is expected of this role. I think for me, something with coming from a sort of campaigning background that I've learned over the last few years is that it's really important to admit what you don't know and how you can't help, which is where I guess the community side of this comes in, is actually being aware of the other resources which exist outside you, the Student Advisory Service and other university resources that you can talk to people about, whether they be comfortable engaging with, but also like non-university resources. And again, that's what you were saying, Katie, about like actually connecting with people and I guess just engaging on an individual level. But again, knowing where your limit is as an individual to be able to help people, and having not only the knowledge but the contacts to be able to direct people to other trusted and I guess safe spaces in which they can talk about these issues and engage.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And any more questions from the floor? There's one over there. Yeah, feel free.
I just want to ask I found the student bubble, like the Cambridge bubble, really alienating when I came here from like a non-conventional background. And I guess I want to know what it is that you would do to help students sort of build community outside of the university. That was something that would help a lot there.
Yeah, and just to repeat that, the Cambridge bubble can be alienating. How would you help students for their welfare to sort of find a community possibly outside of the university? So we'll go back the other way. Harvey, if you're okay to start, why not?
Yes. So I guess for me, there's this is a really big issue for me, and it's what I've been working on for the last year, is sort of having town-down conversations and how to facilitate accessible space which isn't just a student bubble and actually listens to people who maybe don't feel at home in the university or are actually actively excluded from the university. So it's a question I've thought about a lot, and I guess my first answer to that would be trying to provide spaces for that to happen. The fortified college bubbles don't really help with feeling like you're in a community. So I think a big thing is about opening up colleges. I'd work to restore access for students, but also to think about how can non-students access these spaces, and how can we actually, have, as you would in any normal neighbourhood or community, just have those interactions with people who aren't part of the university. So whether that looks like there's colleges in Oxford which have turned some of their sports fields into community gardens, and which is, I guess, linked to the second thing, which is certainly I found in the first few years being here, is that there is so much amazing stuff which goes on outside of the student bubble. There's so many local resources, there's so many local campaigns, there's so many local charities which do this fantastic work and need people to be involved in. But first of all, students don't have the time often to be involved. So, any campaigning that the Welfare and Community Officer does around reducing workload, reading weeks, actually space to rest. That's all part of like community work. But also the knowledge is a big thing for me. Like I'm finding things in the last couple of months that I didn't know existed like 6 months ago and have existed for years, and I wish I'd known about as a fresher with an interest in like climate and growing things, and I wish I'd been able to just go to these resources, and so that's, I guess, probably the first project that I'd work on if I'm elected into this role is like there's lots of different maps of like things you can get involved in Cambridge, so I want to collate that information into a document which we then pass on to all students, both through kind of conventional SU channels, but also through these organisations themselves that are included. And this is a project, I guess. It's a project that was started years ago called a disorientation guide, which just included university campaigns and organisations. So I'd want to do that for all of Cambridge and give it to all students. Sorry for going on too long.
That's all right. I did say there was sort of no proper time limit. So, Katie, the same question. The Cambridge bubble can be alienating. What would you do to help students find a community, possibly outside of the university?
Yeah, so I think we've got really good tools with stuff like the Freshers Week Fair, where everyone gets to go and see the societies that Cambridge has to offer, and I would really love to be able to incorporate non-student societies into that, because I think that we already have a space that freshers are so excited to engage with, and we do this again when we do refreshers, and I think it would be really amazing to have non-student societies incorporated into that. And not just activist societies. I think activist societies are so empowering for so many people, but activism is often a mental load that can be sometimes quite taxing for people and can be emotionally draining. And with the current system that we have, which obviously I want to address and try to change, it can be really difficult for that only non-student space to be an activist space. And so I want to try and encourage students getting involved in groups that don't necessarily have an activist focus in terms of campaigning. I think most social groups and social wellbeing groups do have activism at their core, but I think it's really important to just create these spaces where people can engage with others, and to try and also allow then students to find people within the university that perhaps they're not aware of, that share their background, share their lived experience, and they can connect with them, but yeah, outside of a university space where there are these pressures that come with being at the University of Cambridge. There is the elitism of being at this university. There is the barriers created by the collegiate system. And yeah, by allowing people to connect across those divides in a space that is removed from Cambridge and its legacies and its understandings of the world, I think can really allow people to, yeah, properly engage with each other and actually get to meet some really cool and amazing people that perhaps they didn't even know were at this university and were people that they could get to know and interact with.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So, going back to the floor, are there any more questions? Any more? Oh, there's one from over there.
So, disability and welfare intersect quite a lot, especially in places where social anxiety doesn't intersect very well with the community, and there is a heightened barrier to access to community in that respect. I know one of your policies is isolation in that. How would you go about doing that, and how would you work together with disability officers to ensure that these people have been reached and can have access to that community?
Right, so just to say that again for the mic, disability and welfare sort of intersect. For instance, social anxiety, but that doesn't work necessarily very well with community. How do you deal with that, and how do you deal with things like isolation? I hope that was an okay sort of summary. And we'll go back where we came to, I think, is Katie first. So.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to look at creating spaces that don't have to be really large group social spaces. So while some of my ideas for SU-based events that would bring communities together involve, big kind of refreshers style fairs to cater to people that find that really appealing, I also think that I want to host smaller events that allow people to come to spaces and to engage with others on a level where they don't feel as much pressure, as much stress about being with loads of people that they don't necessarily know. I will be honest, it's not something that I personally experience, and I don't want to speak for the solutions that I think would be most appropriate for for the fact that it's not my lived experience, and so it's definitely something that I would want to work with students getting feedback on, because I think the most important way that we can address these student concerns is actually by speaking to them and finding out what these community spaces would look like. Would they be online chat forums? Would they be Zoom spaces? Would they be in person, small groups? Would they be large spaces but with more social support? I think there are so many different avenues that we can look to go down, but it isn't something that I would want to decide from a personal basis, because it's not something that I find myself often struggling with, as perhaps sitting on a large board like this might suggest. And so, yeah, I would just want to make sure that I'm listening to students and seeing what solutions they would find most fitting for them.
Thank you very much. So I've just got a notification. It's been asked, it's me trying to sign in. It's not. Golly. Right. So, Harvey, the question was, disability and welfare intersects, such as social anxiety, but that doesn't work that well with community. How do you deal with that, and how do you deal with things like isolation?
Yeah, okay. Big question. Yeah, I guess I'd echo what Katie said about like the position of welfare and community officer as being not one in which I have the answers. But I think like method is important, and I think that not only should kind of events and stuff like the planning process be in coordination with the disabled students officers, but I think it should kind of be informed by like developing structures in which disabled students feel like they can actively participate in the spaces that are created by the SU. So like developing systems of feedback with the disabled students officer in which like we can actually kind of speak directly to students, but also kind of have anonymous like forms and stuff where we're kind of in a feedback loop of developing like a policy. I think that a lot of this idea of sort of event scale and like event nature is something that we should probably have a kind of extended team discussion about before anything is arranged. And yeah, I think I'm not best placed to be like leading on any of that, but you know, like I think it should be the SU, the Disabled Students Campaign, and also just try and find ways in which we can make this a democratic process and disabled students themselves can be involved without that becoming too much like a burden or an accessibility issue.
Brilliant, thank you very much. As I said, we've got quite a long time, so anybody else with any more questions would be fantastic. The first time I saw was just over there, if that's right.
So everyone can say kind of welfare intersects with quite a lot of student identities, and traditionally people from experience the welfare community also tends to role. So I was just wondering whether given the needs that a few deliberation role, whether that's kind of changed your approach to the role, or how you would try to ensure that those groups are still.
Just to repeat that, welfare intersects with sort of various student identities, and traditionally the welfare and community officer will work closely with liberation roles. Basically, how will you see this working relationship, and how will you ensure that these liberation roles and these identities are well represented? Harvey, if you're okay to go first.
Yeah, sure. I guess the answer to this question, again, is probably thinking outside of an SU bubble completely, because the fact that there have been no applications for either BME or Women's Officer is, yeah, I guess kind of a reflection on people's willingness or like sort of, I guess, conception of the relevance of the SU. So like it would be kind of audacious for me to say like, you know, I'd work with like just like the BME campaign or the women's campaign and try and mediate like the lack of a presence of an officer through like SU structures. I think the student union needs to kind of find ways of reaching women and non-binary and BME students directly through groups that I guess actively are engaged in those communities, like, I guess, and especially on, groups which are concerned with issues that primarily affect those communities. So like Cambridge University for like reproductive rights and stuff, but then also like non-student groups like Trans Liberation Cambridge, and like the way in which, I guess, that's the essence, is thinking outside of the student union, because right now it doesn't feel like the student union maybe does actively represent those groups.
Brilliant, thank you. And Katie, go for it.
Yeah, I have to agree with Harvey. I mean, it's always disappointing to find out that such important roles are not being run for, and it is, as someone who identifies as a woman, it's quite a difficult thing to hear that there is going to be no women's officer, as I've definitely found the women's officers at my college and the women's campaign to be something incredibly valuable during my time here. And so, yeah, I really hope that this will change. I don't know whether these go up in a by-election as well, and I do hope that there will be people who come to stand for this role, but until a time that we do see people filling these roles, I think it's really important to be, as Harvey said, working with both student and non-student communities. There are lots of incredibly valuable sources of information and also leaders in community groups who can try and inform us and support us in our decision making. As welfare and community officers, we sit on the Women's Homelessness Action Board, and that can help inform us about women's experiences outside of Cambridge student life. I also think it's really important that we work with the MCR and JCR officers. As someone who's been on the JCR at my college, I know that we do a lot of work behind the scenes that often people don't hear about, and there's a lot that goes into these roles. But they are often people who have aspirations far bigger than their colleges. That's why you go into these kinds of roles. You don't tend to go in just because you want to change the life in your college. You want to change things at a university level, at a societal level, and so I think these people will offer us so many amazing thoughts and feelings and opinions that we can bring together and really connect with when we're trying to hopefully mediate the impact of not having these officers elected currently.
Yeah, just to say, so yes, both of those roles, the BME officer and the women's officer, will go up for by-election in Easter. So if anyone has been massively motivated by either of those two speeches, then definitely keep an eye out for that, and you will be able to run. So, what's the time? I think we can go for one more question from the audience, if there's any more. Any hands? So in that case, we'll go for closing speeches, a minute each or a bit longer if you so wish. Go for it. Sorry, sorry.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of wanted to conclude by saying what is at the heart of the policies I've put in my manifesto and the things that I've been talking about, which is that I think that as a university we need to recognise that just because we've got an incredible academic legacy, we don't just produce brains, we produce people, and they're whole people who have much more to them than just their academic lives, and I don't think the university does enough currently to consider that. People are engaged in communities, they're part of communities, and we need to be conscious of that and conscious of where we sit, both in Cambridge, in the UK, in the world, in the groups that we are members of, in the groups that represent us. And I think it's really essential that we give people the time and space to be able to actively engage themselves with these projects, because when students are overworked and stressed, it's very difficult for them to engage with this. So yeah, I want to make sure that Cambridge's legacy is not only great academics, but also great activists and self-actualised individuals.
Thank you very much. And next up, Harvey, go for it.
Yeah, I guess for me, welfare and community is kind of about rooms which aren't very much like this one, and structures which, yeah, I guess as Katie said, reach out to people in their lived experience and create spaces for them to be empowered, but also, yeah, I guess create spaces above everything for them to be involved in and actively participate in. The university has a crisis of burnout. Like the mental health across this institution is a really, obviously huge issue. And I also don't think it's politicized enough. I think that by and large, decisions are made by decisions are made by the university, which affect all of us, and we can't hold them to account because the student union consists of 8 people, and I would like to broaden that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Could we get a round of applause for next we have the president, open brackets, PG, close brackets, the postgraduate president. We have one candidate for that, and that is Barish Patan. Last me is water. Alright, settle down, class. Come on, guys. Find your seats. Okay, so as always, excuse me. Thank you. Sorry. We have one candidate for this all. That's Barish Patan. You have 1 minute to sort of make any opening remarks you'd like to, and then we'll move on to questions. Go for it.
Hi everyone, myself Barish Pratap, and currently I am pursuing my MPhil in Energy Technologies at the Department of Engineering. And there I am also having a role of academic representative for engineering PG taught, and I'm affiliated to Lucy Cavendish College, and there I'm trying my best to discharge my responsibility as university citizen, and I'm in the role of treasurer at their MCR. And I feel that I'm most passionate about sustainability and all-inclusive future for everyone. And in technical aspect, I'm working on 2 projects. They are mainly on decarbonizing the road transport sector. One is to clean up the conventional vehicle, and another one is to develop some new technologies. Yeah, it's all that.
Thank you very much. Now we have 3 questions submitted on the form, so we'll just go through those. I'm going to say, again, we've got a fair bit of time, so up to 2 minutes, but don't feel like you need to speak that long. Okay, so the first one is, a lot of postgraduate students are both students and workers, as they're paid to do things like supervisions, research, or lectures.
Yeah.
How will you support the postgrads that are workers as well as students?
For the commitment of their time, they have to be paid proportionately. What are the, in terms of the wages or the hourly payment rates, and these limits have to be increased, revised on annual basis in proportional to the inflation rate we are experiencing in Cambridge or UK. Yeah.
Brilliant, that makes sense. And second question is, what is your key aim in improving equality, diversity, and inclusion for postgraduates in the university?
There are many aspects. First of all, funding is a very big issue. People from developing or underdeveloped nations are facing very difficulty in accessing the scholarships available here. So, in my view, we have to look into the scholarship distribution across the geographies, or based on the gender and all these identities that we can associate with them. And I'm happy to share that I'm currently taking up a matter with postgraduate admissions office that is on. As a academic rep in engineering department, I started that as STEM and beyond inclusion of students from 46 Commonwealth countries. Commonwealth scholarship, there is a timeline, and there are two glitches. University doesn't offer deferral for the master's program. And the timeline for Commonwealth scholarship is such that before an applicant gets an offer from the university, the timeline passes. So it's like catch-22. You are not going to get a deferral offer, and at the same time, they are not going to give you some more time. And I raised that issue in the last faculty board meeting, and I'm happy to share that now postgraduate admissions office is trying to coordinate with the people at Commonwealth Scholarship Commission. I'm very much hopeful that before the starting of, by the 31st of July this year, I'll be having something, the students from those countries will be having an opportunity to defer their offer if they have fulfilled all their conditions except the financial condition, and that is very hard to fulfill in individual capacity. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And the third question we've had through was, as the postgraduate president, you will sit on a lot of high-level university committees.
Yeah.
How do you plan to advocate effectively for students while also maintaining key stakeholder relationships with the others on those committees?
Anyone, whether individual or in a group, larger groups, everyone is looking forward to protect their interest in the bestest form. And until and unless one party or one group doesn't try to encroach the rights or the interest of other party, we can find solution in harmony. And many times it happens that we find some conflicts and all these things. We have some guidelines, and for the guidelines we don't need just to read in the letters. We have many times we have to read those guidelines in their spirit. And by going through letter and spirit, I feel that you will always find a solution.
Brilliant.
They are enlisted in clauses, and there are many provisos. So all these things can help you out to find solutions.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on, as always, to questions from the floor. So if there's anyone who wanted to ask a question of their potential next postgraduate president, we've got one over there. Go for it.
So one of your policies is asking to scrap master's application for your current course students applying for a second master in a full race. So current SU policy is to abolish the master's application fee entirely. Do you intend to walk back that policy, or?
No, my initial objective will be to push that policy to scrap admission application fee for everyone. But as we can see that SU is struggling. Emphasizing on that policy, but university is not willing to roll out that. So for initial step, my objective is to enable at least those students who are finding it difficult to apply for their application. And many universities in UK offer a niche-based fee waiver, but Cambridge is having no such policy. So that is my first and foremost agenda, to get that scrapped for those marginalized sections across the globe. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I feel that it's better to have something non-zero than staying on the deadlock.
Any more questions from the audience? Just put your hands up and I will find you. Don't see anybody. In that case, Harish, if you'd like to make any closing remarks, take as much time as you want, David. Any closing remarks you'd like to leave our audience with?
The people who are here, I feel that they are very much interested in student politics and making university a better place. From my experience, whether as academic media rep or as a treasurer, I felt that people are deeply involved with their academics and keep themselves inside silos. And we all have to work collectively to create more people engaged into student politics at our university. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for Arish. Fantastic. So we have one more vacancy today, and that is President Open Brackets UG close brackets, so the undergraduate president. So could I have, what's in order, Fergus, Herman, and Eve Lane to the front, please. Cool, okay, we'll share, it's fine.
We're sharing a glass, it's all right.
Okay, so as always, we will start with an opening statement after 1 minute. If I put my phone here, can you both at least approximately see that? That's what we'll be running off. And on my list, as on the SU, we'll start with Fergus. So 1 minute, if you will, Fergus, to say whatever you like.
So, hi, I'm Fergus and I'm running to be SU President on a platform of change. The SU does a lot of stuff right, but I believe it needs to do more to make the student union work for students. All the candidates in these elections, right, you've heard tonight, we all have campaign experience, but I also have experience of making tangible change. As Christ ACR treasurer, I made NHS prescriptions free for all students. So I know that we can do more to support student society. I know that we can provide better welfare support. I know we can push for increased bursaries and lunch subsidies. But we also need to stick to our ethical principles, pushing the university to actively decarbonise by installing solar panels, by insulating students' rooms better. We need to be grown up and mature about what we demand from the university. Every promise I have made in my manifesto is something I believe I can deliver. These aren't buzzwords, these aren't vague, unobtainable promises. These are concrete actions. So if you believe in a better university, if you believe in an SU that does more for students, then lend me your vote and we'll build it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fergus and Eve, also 1 minute, if you'd like to start with it. Ready?
Cool. So in terms of student politics, I've very much been there, done that. I know its problems, it has too much bureaucracy, its communication is horrific, and there are always projects sort of lying around unfinished. Like, I know that it doesn't have to work, so I've created an action-driven manifesto that I think is realistic, it could be completed in a year. All of the goals are things that I actually genuinely think are achievable. I want to help sort out the awarding gap, I want to have a student-led approach, I want to ensure that we have lecture recordings, a reading week that's actually implemented, and also Facebook groups in which we have students together supporting one another that are opt-in. I also want to help students through the cost of living crisis. I want to cap rent so that we have tangible changes so that we can support students financially through this crisis. I want the SU to be able to communicate better with its students. I want environmental justice. I've been endorsed by Cambridge Climate Justice and Cambridge Young Greens. I also want justice for staff. Literally just now, I saw a reporter on a moped cycling out of college to go and take up a justy. Yeah, sorry. But you get the idea. Basically, I want those policies put in place.
Thank you very much. So we've had, again, 3 questions come through on the magical interweb form. Number 1, we're going in sort of reversing order, so we'll flip-flop every time. So number 1 is, you've both addressed the cost of living crisis in your manifestos, but what specific policies would you like to implement during your term? I'm going to say a minute each answers for these, if that's okay. And Eve, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so the things I put forward are caps on rent, caps on bills, in line with the fact that obviously bills are massively going up in terms of gas and electricity at the moment. And I've also, at the moment, in SU Council, we've been looking at what SABs have currently been doing, which is putting in place a cost of living fund. I think that will probably change with the severity of the cost of living, but I want to make sure that that's accessible to all of the students that need it, and that obviously it increases in line with that becoming either a bigger problem or a smaller problem. I just want it to be available to all of the students who need it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Fergus, after a minute.
So I think the main thing here, right, is targeted support. The Cambridge bursary hasn't changed in value, in nominal value, since 2016, and it's lost 18% of its value in that time. We need a bursary that rises with inflation, and I will campaign to get that. We also need targeted support in the form of lunch subsidies. It's worked really well on the West Hub, and it should be continued there and expanded to other sites. I think we also need to address that things like rent caps actually sometimes don't work. And the reason for that is if you say to a college you can't go above a certain limit, what they'll do is they'll bring down the most expensive rooms and they'll put up the price of the least expensive rooms. So the students who are most well off, they benefit, their room goes down in price. The students who are least well off, they don't benefit, their room goes up in price. So we need practical policies like increasing bursaries and not to chase policies that sound good and in the end don't work.
Thank you very much, both on the time. I appreciate that. Question number 2. What will your approach to future strikes and actions short of strike be? Fergus, if you'd like to start after a minute.
So I think here, a really big part of my manifesto is demanding tuition refunds. Tuition fee refunds for when learning is disrupted by strikes. The really important thing here is that this makes the university suffer financially. Because when our lecturers currently go on strike, the university gets to keep double the money. They get our tuition fees, and they don't have to pay the people striking. They're striking for just reasons. We have to support them as a students' union. And the best way to support them, and the best way to support students, is to demand tuition fee refunds. And maybe you think, oh, this can't happen, this is impossible. Well, it works. It's worked at KCL, it's worked at UCL, it works at LSE. This student union has never demanded tuition fee refunds, and I would change that. I'm on the side of students, and I think it is astonishing that in all this time we haven't taken this really obvious, easy step that helps the people going on strike, it helps them secure the causes they care about, and it helps students.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Eve, so same question on your approach to future strikes and action short of strike.
Cool. I think everyone knows that I'm very pro-strike. I'm very supportive of the workers here, and I also am supportive of the Justice for Workers campaign and making sure that all of the staff at all of the colleges get a living wage. In terms of tuition fee refunds, I don't see that as particularly realistic. It has to go through the Office for Students. It happened a lot at the beginning of when strike action in universities came into massive conflict. But it's not super realistic now, and I think particularly for the University of Cambridge, they will have thought of that. It's a ridiculously difficult thing to get through. The other thing I think it slightly plays into is the marketisation of education. The idea that we're trying to get our money's worth out of our education is not really the point. I see our lecturers as people we need to support. It represents our jobs in the future for a lot of us. Academia is not a market, or it shouldn't, well, it is a market right now, that's the whole problem, but it shouldn't be a market, and that's what I'm working to fight.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And question number 3 before we go to the audience is how would you, as a candidate, tackle balancing being a representative of the student body alongside working with student groups who may cause conflict between different student groups across the university? Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, in that case, I'll slightly rephrase. How would you as a candidate tackle balancing being a representative of the student body alongside actions by other student groups which may cause, for instance, damage to university property or conflict between different student groups? How would you bring those together? Does that make a bit more sense?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Eve, if you'd like to go first.
I mean, student groups are part of the student body. I'm not 100% sure what this question was getting at. I assume it's referring to activist groups and the problems that they may cause. Activism, obviously, is meant to cause disruption. That's its whole point. Activism represents dissatisfaction and is meant to cause discomfort in the university or in the institution it's attacking in order to make them change. I do not endorse criminal actions. If anyone's doing anything out of, against the law, that can't be endorsed by the student union. It's a charity, it's a whole thing. But I would, what I would say is that student groups' dissatisfaction is representative of students' dissatisfaction. Students are members of student groups. That's what they're made of. So if students are expressing dissatisfaction in certain ways, I think looking at why they're upset rather than necessarily kind of coming down on them for the actions that they're expressing it through is the way that I would approach that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Fergus, if you'd like to answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I can agree with what Eve just said. I think we all support activism and we don't support criminal damage. Legally, we don't support criminal damage, and also we wouldn't want to take that position anyway. But I also should kind of reply as well briefly to the thing you mentioned before about marketisation of education. Because currently, and for the past 19 years, it seems that we've been living in a state of denial where we don't want to admit that we lost the fight. We all believe education should be free, but we are all here indebting ourselves sometimes £27,000, sometimes more than that, just for tuition. education should be free, but it is not. We cannot remain in denial. We cannot pretend that we are not losing thousands of pounds by being here. And it's the student union's duty to fight for students' interest, to say on behalf of students that we demand money back. And it is plausible, and it has happened for exactly the same reason in just the past 3 years. Look it up online. So I say the SU needs to fight for students on this. I don't care about multilingual education because we lost that debate. I care about you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And just for anyone a bit confused, I'm basically going to let the candidates say whatever they like within legal limits as answers to questions. So that was obviously wrong offer that was applied to a previous thing. I'm fine with that. That was all of our submitted questions. So let's get ready to rumble. Anyone in the audience with any more questions they'd like to suggest? Got one just here.
Someone of Zainab, I'm the graduate president. Both of you have goals that require lobbying colleges, but you have a limited amount of time to build and strengthen these relationships, and we are a central body, we are not a collegiate body. So how do you foresee actually making change on a collegiate level?
Right, I'm just going to repeat that very quickly. So this is on behalf of the current undergrad president, Zainab, whose job you're trying to steal. Sorry, whose role you're trying to steal. Lobbying colleges, you both sort of mentioned it. However, this is a sort of centralised body. The SU is limited time. How do you actually see yourself going about it? Those, if you'd like to start.
I think in many cases it's a matter of going to those central bodies, like the Senior Tutors Committee, like the Bursars Committee, and pressuring them for change, because we are a collegiate university, there's no getting around that. So it's a matter of reconciling the fact that we are a central body, this is a collegiate university. I think as well, obviously, the president sits on the University Council, so it goes back to the things that we discussed at the start of this Hustings, about pushing for change that influences people across the university. But I think we also can't be in denial about the fact that most of students' lives, particularly pastorally, is made up by their collegiate experience. So that is a sort of really important and crucial part of what we do.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Ian?
I think my approach is potentially the opposite. I think I would go in and support the students who are already working to make change within those colleges. I think when things come from the students, I've had issues with this in the past with trying to lobby colleges, my own, for instance. And in terms of staff members being completely unreceptive to students, like individual students coming forwards, but actually they say, you know, if you've got a campaign, come forward to us with it, you know, make your case to us, but it's actually really difficult to do that through individual action. So what I would do is provide support, provide research to the students who are currently doing that work already, and make sure that they have that route to communicate with college properly. In terms of things like rent, that would be the kind of discussion I would have, where it's actually the students leading it, and the SU as a facilitator for that conversation between colleges and the students.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Any more questions from the audience? One just
So although the SAB team isn't directly hierarchical, as a president you are often in a position of leadership when it comes to the direction or the dynamic of the SAB team, and it's really important to have a cohesive team that values all of the voices. So how would you work to lead and support the wider collective goals of the SAB team beyond just your own?
Again, just to repeat, the president is often in a position of leadership with the wider SAB team. How do you work to support their wider goals and objectives? Ian, if you'd like to start.
I mean, in terms of things like access and welfare, and actually the disabled students officer's role as well, I think that a lot of my policies play into those really easily. They very much overlap. The awarding gap stuff, the cost of living stuff, the communication is all problems that will be faced by all of those SABs. So I think in terms of providing an overarching shape, that's very much where I would be going with that. Likewise with things like environmental justice and justice for staff, I think that those are policies which obviously are less student focused, but are still things that are definitely tackled by those groups, particularly the Welfare and Communities Officer. Yeah, I think that it would be an easy thing, and I'm great to talk to in an office situation, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. And Fergus, are you great in an office situation?
Sorry. Well, thank you very much, yeah. I think I completely agree with you, right? It's a matter of identifying those goals, helping to facilitate them. I mean, sort of provide reassurance. I've worked as Graduate Treasurer for the past 15 months. I've been on college's governing body in that time, but I've also had to work with a committee of 20 students, right? And it's a matter of identifying how people's goals work together, if they want to work separately, that's fine too. And I think I would say on that, judge us by what we say and judge us on our experience.
Thank you very much, both of you, very short and sweet. Any more with the questions from the audience? Any hands up? Oh, there's one over there. Go for it.
If elected, how do we go about interacting with student media and student press?
Okay, so just to repeat, that's a question from varsity. If elected, how you deal with us, with student politics, sorry, student newspapers and student media, that kind of thing. Fergus, if you'd like to start.
I think they're a really important way to get the message out. I think that this SU, previous SUs haven't always been the best about communicating with the media. I think it's a two-way street, and I'm sure varsity would admit that of previous terms. So I think basically it's a matter of, it's like the press, recognizing that the press is like part of how you communicate with students, recognizing that the readership of varsity and of newspapers isn't mimetic of, it isn't the same as, right, the entire student population. But I think the hostility, the kind of mutual fighting and so on has to end. It helps no one. It doesn't help students, and it doesn't help the students' union. So I would look to build bridges. We can get a drink next week if you fancy.
And Eve.
I mean, this was one of the things I was really worried about when running for SU, is the amount of criticism I might get from the press or from CamFest or something like that. But I think actually the idea that I could be criticised is really important. The fact that the SU and the press, I don't want to be, obviously I'm going to do great things, but actually if students have issues with what I'm doing, I need to know. So while I've got like all of this stuff about communication, I'm going to do weekly video updates, SU bulletins to JCRs so that they can get out that way, as well as the existing newsletters, that kind of thing. I actually think that having some separation between the press and the SU is really important, just because varsity, has a very significant role in and of itself in providing criticism, providing a distinct student voice.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Let's go for quite a while. So I saw your hand first, and then after that, yourself.
How will you ensure the communication between the SU and the student body works effectively, especially in situations where policy passes and students haven't been made well enough aware of it, and there is huge backlash? How will you deal with a situation like that?
Again, just to repeat, how would you ensure communication between the student union and the student body sort of go swimmingly? For instance, if a controversial motion passes at SU Council. So who will pass it for you? Yeah, go for it.
I think a really good example of this is the most recent controversy, which is the veganism motion. I think that was really poorly communicated, because all of the things that people were getting angry about weren't actually in the motion itself. It was a motion to communicate with the catering staff, and it didn't have a time scale, all of these things. Like, it was a very different motion to what was being portrayed. So I think very much in terms of like updates, being in video form, being really consumable, being hopefully widely read by students. I think, again, JCRs are particularly important for getting this kind of message out, because they already have those connections to the individual students. I think, honestly, the disconnect between the SU and the student body isn't necessarily solvable in a year, but I think that JCRs already have those connections in place, and everyone knows the people on their JCR, so that's the kind of way that I would get into doing that. But yeah, making it accessible, essentially.
Thank you very much. And Fergus, same question to you about problems.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, firstly, to address kind of the elephant behind it, I didn't vote for the vegan motion, but I agree that communication needs to be better on this. I think a big part of it comes from when the SU does things that don't align with what the majority of students think, and that the situations aren't always unpredictable. My JCR at the meeting with the vegan motion proposed an amendment to make it vegetarian and vegan, sort of recognising, right, that a lot of students would think it was a step too far too soon. And I think really the way that the SU gets to communicate better with students is to tackle things that students really care about, is to tackle the cost of living crisis head on, because often it can seem self-indulgent or it can seem important, but aside from the main point, if we have policy stances that take great, worthwhile stances but don't have any effect on student lives. So I think the really best way to communicate with students is to do things that are in their interests.
Thank you very much. Once again, over to the audience. Anyone with a burning question? So I said I'd take yours, didn't I? Go for it.
As someone who's on the JCR and my college, one of the frequent things I come across is that students feel extremely disconnected from the SU. And that's something we've already talked about a lot tonight. How are you tangibly going to make students feel that the SU is actively there for them, and they can go to the SU in the same way they go to their JCR?
So again, just to repeat, that was from someone who's at the JCR at their college. Students feel disconnected. What tangible change will you make to sort of make students feel more connected with the SU and feel like they can go to the SU? Is it Fergus? Yeah.
I think we have to join the dots here. I think there's a reason why students feel disconnected from the SU. and it's because the SU spends £1.2 million a year, and most students see none of that. I think we have to recognise that colleges, JCRs and the SU aren't going to fulfil the same function, right? We've discussed before, one's a centralised body, one is in your college very close to you, has 20 people, you know them all probably quite well. But I think the way that we get change for students and change how students feel about the SU is not to send them a video update saying, look, we're still campaigning the things we were before, but it's to say, look, we've changed, we're now trying to get more resources for your societies, we're trying to get things that actually benefit you, we're trying to get a lunch subsidy for you. Because students will engage more when they care more. It's a matter of listening better to students, understanding what students want, and telling them, look, we are delivering on those things. Because the SU can't become a JCR everywhere. There's probably, 600 people or something like that on different kinds of JCRs and MCRs around Cambridge. As you said, there's 8 sabbatical officers. They aren't going to fulfil the same function. The SU can fulfil a better function and support students that way.
Thank you very much. Bang on a minute. Thank you. Eve, same question.
Cool, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all of that. I think there's a kind of structural issue, like, all over this university with the fact that nothing is centralised, and this is a central body which actually makes it exceptionally difficult to use. That being said, a lot of my policies are very student-led. I want to consult with students, and I think, honestly, it does happen. The SU does consult with students, but it's really difficult to communicate that that's happening, and it's really difficult to get the message out there for students who want to be consulted. And if you don't show up to SU Council, how do you know, that kind of thing? So obviously that is about communication. To an extent, it is about nice little video updates. But I also think that things like actively going out into JCRs, creating those groups, making sure that JCRs can communicate with one another as well is really important. I mean, it's a really difficult problem, and I don't think it'll be solved easily, and not necessarily within a year, but that's the kind of thing that I would do towards it.
Thank you very much. So we're at 8:15. Everyone expected this to go a bit late anyway, so I'm going to. So we're going to take one more question from the audience and then go to closing speeches. So I saw your hand earlier, so if that's all right.
So as a SAB, often you might be assigned policies, or you might have policy voted on that you don't necessarily agree with the policy administration. How would you approach this?
Again, just to repeat, as a SAB, you may have policies assigned to you that you don't necessarily agree with because they were sort of just voted through by SU Council. How will you deal with this? And Eve, if you'd like to go first.
I mean, the whole point of this is that it's coming from the students. If the student body doesn't want strike support 1 year, that's something that I would have to accept as a sabbatical officer. That's not something that I have any control over. Obviously, I would speak for it in council. If it was put through, I'd work towards it really hard in the office, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that can be helped. And if the student body is saying something different to what I'm saying, then I should be listening to that. And if the student body is saying something that actually potentially there's other kind of upset behind that, for instance, like RE strike support, maybe teaching hasn't been very good, maybe there's been poor communication between staff and students, that kind of thing. So again, working to improve the problems behind that, yeah, and making sure that students are just generally satisfied.
Brilliant, thank you. And Fergus, same questions. Could you repeat? Sorry, of course. The question was, as a SAB, you may be assigned policies, for instance by student council, that you don't necessarily agree with. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so thank you. I think I have a lot of experience with this, right? I've been on JCR for so long. The JCR does things that you don't necessarily agree with, and you learn to work with it. Because ultimately, when it comes to representing students and listening to students, if it's what the students want, you've got to do it. And I think a big problem that you can have with the SU, right, is things like student council. I mean, I've been chair of it for nearly a year, and I recognise it's a pretty imperfect forum, right? It's a pretty mere way of understanding what students actually want. Part of it is just common sense, and part of it is listening better to students. So I think going to JCRs, going to colleges, actively seeking input from people, even when we're all busy, we're all reluctant to actually engage with the survey or the next email and so on, is a really key way of doing it. In my campaign, I've been listening to students, and I think listening has to come first. But as for policies and so on, it's just a matter of teamwork.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So we'll move on to closing statements from both of you, if that's all right. Fergus, if you'd like to go first, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming today. But when I look around the room, you take away the people who are running the election, the people who are running in the election, people who are administering it and are reporting on it. There's some fewer than 10 students in this room. And I think that's emblematic of the problem that I am trying to fix. Most students at ESU is fairly detached from their lives. They feel it doesn't do much for them. They feel it's part of the emotion they get angry by sometimes. And so is it like a surprise they don't engage that much? Is it a surprise that last year turnout in these elections was 12%? I say no, and I say I'm running to do something about this. Every promise I've made in my manifesto, I believe we can deliver. They will make a difference for students, and they aren't buzzwords, they aren't vague promises, they are concrete actions I know I can deliver. So if you believe in a better university, if you believe in a better SU, vote for me, and we can build it together.
Thank you, and Eve.
Cool. I think a lot of what I've been saying is about creating communities. Again, kind of similar to what you were saying, is that everything kind of has to come from the students. We have to respect their views. Everything is going to be fantastic if we do that. So, I mean, my policies are all based on student welfare and on things that I truly believe will make this university a better place to be. I want this university to have an ethical record. I want the awarding gap to be decreased so that it feels like a more equitable place to be. I want the cost of living to come down for students who really need it to, so that people can afford to live here and don't feel like they're constantly struggling. And I also want the SU to be able to communicate properly with its student body. Those are the things that I stand for. If you stand for those, vote for me.
Thank you, both of you. Just before we finish, I'd like to say thank you to both for a very respectful and not fighting campaign so far. We've still got a couple of days left if you really want to go for it. Also, I can't get that down early. So, for legal reasons, I also don't support criminal activity. Good. So, with that concludes Hustings. Can we get a round of applause for the two undergrads? Three more things to mention. Number one, I've already mentioned, is that there are by-elections for some of the roles which weren't filled. So that is the BME officer and the women's officer. They're both sabbatical roles. Take a year out of your degree, get paid to do this stuff. And then there will be by-elections in Easter term. There are also 3 portfolio roles. It's families, part-time and double-time sort of representatives. They don't get paid, but they also don't, in theory, do as much. So they will be elected as student council in Easter. I assume the first one, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Polls closed on Thursday the 2nd of March at 5 o'clock, so that's just under 48 hours, 45 hours for you to vote. So do that now. I see you. Do it now. And finally, there is a college competition. So someone was talking about turnout earlier. We want big turnout, high turnout, bigly turnout. So there is a college competition. The college with the biggest proportion of its members voting will win. I believe it's a pizza party. And we all like pizza, we all like parties. So vote, as I said, do it now. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
I was expecting comments, I didn't get any. My chair was not prepared to be.
Yeah,
it was not prepared to be like confrontational, so I was like really shitty.
Really much more okay. Very good. Thank you.
History doesn't know what's hit it. Third year history doesn't know what's hit it. I just know there also went to the chat. I thought that was
I'm we both want to look at the vote page.
Oh yeah, that's